The asteroid mining platform Hermes 7 hung like a wounded predator against the ink-black backdrop of space, its massive drilling apparatus groaning under unexpected stress. Dr. Elena Rodriguez gripped the safety railing of the observation deck, her dark eyes fixed on the holographic displays that flickered with increasingly erratic readings. "Something's wrong," she muttered, more to herself than to her research partner, Dr. Akira Tanaka, who was busy recalibrating the geological scanners. The platform had been commissioned by the Interstellar Mining Consortium to extract rare quantum-reactive minerals from XR392, a resource-rich asteroid located in the contested periphery of human-controlled space. What should have been a routine extraction had become anything but routine in the last 17 hours. Initial drill penetrations had revealed unexpected geological anomalies. Quantum resonance meters were going haywire, displaying readings that defied every standard mining protocol. The asteroid's internal structure seemed to shift and change as if alive, resisting the drilling process with an almost sentient determination. "Structural integrity at 62%, the platform's AI announced in its clinical, emotionless voice. "Recommend immediate cessation of drilling operations." Akira looked up, his usually calm demeanor crackling with nervous energy. "Elena, we need to pull back. These readings make no sense. The mineral composition is changing faster than our scanners can process." But Elena was beyond listening. Her fingers danced across the holographic interface, pulling up layer after layer of geological data. Something was calling to her, a pattern just beyond the edge of comprehension. The asteroid wasn't just a chunk of space rock. It was hiding something. A violent tremor ripped through the platform. Klaxons blared. Emergency sealing protocols activated with a hiss of pressurized air. Loose equipment crashed to the floor, and for a moment, Elena was certain the entire structure would tear itself apart. "Drilling breach in Sector 7, the AI announced. "Quantum destabilization detected. Recommend." The AI's voice cut off mid-sentence. In the moment of absolute silence that followed, Elena saw it. Through the observation port, a strange blue light pulsed from the newly created drill hole. Not the harsh artificial light of mining equipment, but something organic, something alive. "We're going down," Akira said, his voice a mixture of terror and scientific fascination. Elena didn't respond. Her entire being was focused on that light. Something deep in her subconscious recognized that this was more than a scientific discovery. This was a moment that would change everything. The platform lurched again. Massive support struts that had been engineered to withstand the most extreme mining conditions began to buckle. Automated safety systems initiated emergency evacuation protocols. Escape pods began to launch, their sleek forms shooting away from the disintegrating platform. But Elena remained. "Get out of here, Akira," she said, her voice surprisingly calm. Her research partner hesitated. "I'm not leaving you." "That's an order," Elena snapped, her years of military training surfacing. "Someone needs to document this." Reluctantly, Akira secured his environmental suit and made his way to the last remaining escape pod. Through the reinforced glass, he watched as Elena approached the breached drilling site, her own suit's systems adapting to the rapidly changing environmental conditions. The blue light grew more intense. When Elena's hand touched the smooth, obsidian-like surface that had been revealed by the drill, the entire platform seemed to hold its breath. A burst of quantum energy erupted, a wave of impossible brightness that should have vaporized everything in its path. But when the light faded, Elena remained, untouched, transformed. The artifact pulsed, waiting. In the vast emptiness of space, the remnants of the Hermes 7 platform drifted like cosmic debris. Of the dozen researchers who had been aboard, only 2 escape pods had successfully launched. And only one person, Dr. Elena Rodriguez, remained at the site of what would soon be recognized as the most significant discovery in human history. The first mystery. Why her? The first hint that this was no ordinary discovery. The quantum communication. Burst arrived simultaneously on 3 continents and 12 orbital stations. raw, unfiltered data that immediately crashed every standard communication protocol. By the time global networks stabilized, the message was clear. Dr. Elena Rodriguez was no longer just a researcher. She was a potential threat to the entire galactic order. Diplomatic channels erupted into chaos. In the gleaming crystalline chambers of the Xerax Central Diplomatic Nexus, Grand Arbiter Krellnax watched the initial transmission with a mixture of fascination and visceral horror. Holographic displays flickered with data streams, quantum signatures, spectral analysis, preliminary research notes, all pointing to something unprecedented. "The human female has made contact," Krellnax announced to the assembled diplomatic council. His translator implant converted his natural clicking language into precise, emotionless Standard Galactic. "Preliminary analysis suggests a technological interface beyond our current comprehension." The council chamber fell silent. The Xerax were not a species accustomed to uncertainty. For millennia, they had dominated galactic politics through a combination of technological superiority and ruthless diplomatic maneuvering. Humanity had always been a footnote, an emerging species too primitive to warrant serious concern. Until now. Back on Earth, Elena Rodriguez found herself in a secure research facility that made maximum security prisons look like open-air resorts. The artifact, now contained in a quantum-locked chamber that consumed more energy than entire planetary networks, sat inert, or appeared to be. "The quantum resonance is unlike anything we've ever seen," Dr. Marcus Reyes, head of Xenotechnology Research, explained to the assembled military and diplomatic leadership. His hands moved across holographic displays, revealing layer after layer of incomprehensible data. "It's not just a piece of technology. It's responding to something. To someone. To Elena. She could feel it. The artifact pulsed with a rhythm that matched her own heartbeat. When she moved closer to the containment chamber, the quantum readings spiked. When she stepped back, they stabilized. The scientists around her remained oblivious to the connection that was forming, a symbiosis beyond their current understanding. The first diplomatic communique from the Xerax arrived precisely 72 hours after the initial discovery. It was less a communication and more an ultimatum. "Immediate surrender of artifact and research subject is required," the message read. "Failure to comply will result in complete economic and diplomatic isolation." Elena watched as the diplomatic team assigned to her case studied the message. Military advisors argued. Xenopolitical experts debated. The usual human bureaucratic dance that would typically take weeks was condensed into hours of intense negotiation. She knew what was coming. The assassination attempt was elegantly simple. A Xerax diplomatic drone, disguised within the standard communication protocols, carried a quantum disruptor payload capable of vaporizing organic matter at the molecular level. It would have been undetectable to standard security systems. It never reached its target. During a live diplomatic transmission being watched by billions across human space and beyond, Elena's hand moved almost unconsciously. The quantum field around her shifted. The drone simply stopped mid-flight, suspended in an impossible bubble of distorted spacetime. The galaxy watched. Krellnax, observing the transmission from the Xerax Central Diplomatic Nexus, felt something he had not experienced in centuries of political maneuvering. Fear. "This changes everything," he whispered, a sentiment that echoed across multiple star systems. The artifact pulsed. Elena Rodriguez stood perfectly still, her hand extended, the assassin drone frozen in mid-trajectory. Around her, the research facility's quantum sensors went wild, recording a moment that would be analyzed for generations. Humanity had just demonstrated that the rules of engagement had fundamentally changed, and this was only the beginning. The research facility looked like a cathedral to human scientific ambition. Quantum containment chambers lined with materials that didn't exist in any planetary periodic table, holographic interfaces that danced with impossible data, and at the center of it all, Dr. Elena Rodriguez, who was no longer just a researcher, but something entirely different. "We're missing something fundamental," Dr. Marcus Reyes muttered, his fifth cup of synthetic coffee going cold beside a forest of data. Projections. Beside him, Dr. Aisha Omari, a quantum xenobiologist recruited from the African Stellar Consortium, nodded absently. The artifact defied every scientific protocol they'd ever known. Initial scans revealed a technological complexity that made human quantum computing look like an abacus. Its molecular structure shifted continuously, adapting to every probe, every scan, every attempt to understand its nature. Most fascinating was its inexplicable connection to Elena. When she approached the containment chamber, the artifact's quantum signature synchronized with her neural patterns. Brainwave monitors would spike. Quantum resonance would stabilize. It was as if the device was communicating, not through language, but through something far more profound. Dr. Reyes had a theory. It's not just technology, he explained during an emergency briefing to the Global Scientific Council. It's a living database, a repository of knowledge from a civilization that existed beyond our current understanding of space and time. The holographic display behind him shimmered to life, revealing fragmented images that defied comprehension. Stellar formations that shouldn't exist. Mathematical equations that seemed to bend the very fabric of reality. And something else. Glimpses of a conflict so massive, it made current galactic politics look like a children's playground dispute. Elena watched the presentation, with a detachment that worried her colleagues. She was changing. The artifact was changing her. Dr. Omari was the first to notice the subtle transformations. Microscopic neural pathways in Elena's brain were developing new connections. Her cellular structure showed quantum-level adaptations. That should have been impossible. Blood tests revealed microscopic quantum entanglement that integrated her biological systems with technologies beyond current scientific understanding. We're witnessing a symbiosis, Dr. Omari whispered during a private consultation. The artifact isn't just responding to her, it's merging with her. The breakthrough came during what should have been a routine quantum resonance test. Elena touched the containment chamber. The entire facility went dark. When emergency systems restored power 37 seconds later, a holographic projection filled the massive research chamber. It wasn't a mere recording. It was a living memory, a window into the final moments of a civilization that had mastered technologies humanity was only beginning to comprehend. They saw it all. A civilization of incredible complexity, spanning multiple dimensions simultaneously. Technological capabilities that made current galactic powers look like primitive tribes. And then, the threat. A darkness that consumed entire star systems. An intelligence so alien, so incomprehensible, that it could erase entire civilizations with a mere thought. The last moments were chaos. Quantum weapons that tore through dimensional barriers. Entire planetary systems collapsing. And then, a desperate act. The creation of the artifact. A final message. A warning. When the projection ended, Elena stood motionless. Tears streamed down her face, not of sadness but of a comprehension that transcended human emotional range. They were running, she said softly. Not fighting. Running. Dr. Reyes approached carefully. Running from what? Elena's eyes met his. For a moment, something ancient and terrifying looked back. Something that's coming back. The artifact pulsed. Outside the research facility, quantum sensors across the planet began to register impossible readings. Something was stirring. Something that had been waiting for millennia, and humanity had just become its primary point of interest. The economic warfare began with surgical precision. The Xerax Imperium didn't just impose sanctions. They orchestrated a complete systematic dismantling of human economic infrastructure. Quantum trade routes were closed. Critical mineral supply chains were severed. Communication networks faced unprecedented interference that bordered on technological warfare. In the gleaming towers of the Interstellar Trading Consortium, emergency sessions ran around the clock. Holographic displays tracked the cascading Economic impact, entire planetary economies teetering on the brink of collapse. But humanity had Elena Rodriguez. They're playing a game of attrition, Admiral Rebecca Chen explained during a classified briefing. Her fingers traced quantum economic models that showed something unexpected. And they have no idea what they're actually up against. The artifact was doing more than just sitting in a research facility. It was adapting, learning, communicating. Through Elena, humanity was developing technologies that rewrote the fundamental understanding of economic and communication systems. Quantum communication networks began to emerge, networks that could bypass traditional infrastructure, networks that seemed to anticipate blockades before they were even implemented. Dr. Marcus Reyes discovered the first breakthrough during a seemingly routine analysis. The artifact was generating communication protocols that existed simultaneously across multiple quantum states. Traditional blockades became meaningless when information could exist everywhere and nowhere at the same time. It's not just bypassing their systems, Reyes muttered, watching impossible data streams flow across his monitors. It's rewriting them. The first real test came from an unexpected quarter, the Velthari Cooperative, a collection of marginalized species long oppressed by the Xerax economic hegemony, received the first quantum communication package. It wasn't just data. It was a complete technological framework that could revolutionize their entire economic and communication infrastructure. Encoded within the transmission was something more profound. A blueprint, a strategy, a way to challenge the existing galactic power structure. Elena Rodriguez wasn't just defending humanity. She was providing a toolkit for revolution. Diplomatic channels became a battlefield of unprecedented complexity. Where traditional negotiations relied on threat and counter-threat, humanity began implementing quantum predictive diplomacy, negotiation strategies that could anticipate moves several layers deeper than any existing diplomatic protocol. The Xerax found themselves fighting an enemy that didn't play by any known rules. Trade delegations that arrived with economic ultimatums found themselves confronted by human representatives who seemed to know their negotiation strategies before they were even conceived. Blockade routes were anticipated and circumvented before they could be fully implemented. "They're reading our quantum economic signatures," complained High Arbiter Krell Nax during an emergency session of the Galactic Concordance. "It's like they're operating with information that shouldn't be possible to obtain." What the Xerax didn't understand was that humanity was no longer just receiving information. They were becoming something more. The artifact's influence spread through human systems like a quantum neural network. Research facilities across Earth began developing technologies that seemed to emerge from nowhere. Quantum computing solutions, adaptive communication protocols, economic models that could predict and adapt to complex systemic changes. Humanity was transforming. By the end of the first month of economic warfare, something remarkable had happened. The Xerax blockade hadn't just failed. It had become a catalyst for a massive restructuring of galactic economic systems. Marginalized species began receiving technological packages. Communication networks emerged that didn't rely on traditional infrastructure. Economic models became fluid, adaptive, almost alive. And at the center of it all, Dr. Elena Rodriguez continued her research, the artifact pulsing with an energy that seemed to promise something greater, something that was just beginning. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was leading the transformation. The first sign of trouble came as a quantum resonance spike that shredded communications arrays across 3 star systems. The Xerax battle group emerged from quantum fold space like a nightmare made manifest. 12 primary dreadnoughts, 56 support vessels, each ship bristling with weapons technology that had crushed civilizations for millennia. Their quantum signatures alone could vaporize entire planetary defense networks. They had come to end humanity's resistance. Permanently. Admiral Rebecca Chen studied the incoming tactical display with a calmness that belied the magnitude of the threat. The human fleet assembled before her was a fraction of the Xerax force, a collection of retrofitted mining vessels, experimental prototypes, and ships cobbled together from whatever technological insights they'd gleaned from the artifact. Quantum. Adaptive shielding at maximum, her tactical AI reported. The system sounded almost uncertain, a machine struggling to comprehend its own capabilities. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood on the bridge, her presence as much a weapon as any piece of technology. The artifact's influence had transformed more than just human systems. It had fundamentally altered the very nature of their defensive capabilities. The first Xerax weapon discharge should have obliterated the lead human vessel. Instead, something impossible happened. The energy beam passed through the ship, not deflected, not absorbed. Literally passed through as if the vessel existed in a different quantum state simultaneously. The Xerax tactical systems went into immediate confusion, their targeting computers unable to process what they were witnessing. Quantum phase shift confirmed, Chen announced. Her voice was clinical, professional, initiating counter-protocol. What followed was less a battle and more a fundamental reimagining of space combat. Human vessels didn't just defend, they adapted. Each Xerax weapon strike caused the ships to momentarily shift between quantum states. Entire battle groups would instantaneously teleport to different sectors of space, rendering traditional weapon tracking impossible. The artifact's influence was everywhere. Quantum communication networks allowed instantaneous tactical coordination that made the Xerax fleet's synchronized movements look like children playing with model ships. Human vessels moved with a fluidity that suggested they were thinking, not just responding to programmed protocols but actively strategizing. "They're not just ships," Elena whispered, her hand touching a quantum interface panel. "They're extensions of us." Xerax Grand Strategist Vexnaller watched in mounting horror as their most advanced battle group was systematically dismantled without a single human vessel being destroyed. Weapon systems failed. Navigation became impossible. Ships found themselves teleported to the outer edges of star systems, their weapon capabilities completely neutralized. The quantum signatures of the human fleet began to change. No longer just technological systems, they became something more, adaptive. Alive. One by one, Xerax vessels simply stopped functioning. Not destroyed, not disabled. Simply ceased to be relevant. When the quantum dust settled, 12 Xerax dreadnoughts and 56 support vessels had been rendered completely inert. Not a single human ship had been damaged. The message was clear. Humanity was playing by entirely new rules. "We didn't just win," Admiral Chen said quietly. "We demonstrated that the entire concept of warfare has changed." Elena Rodriguez said nothing. Her attention was focused on something far beyond the physical battlefield. The artifact pulsed with an energy that suggested this was merely a prelude, a demonstration, a warning. In the quantum communication networks that now spanned multiple star systems, a message began to propagate. Not a traditional communication, something more profound. A blueprint, a possibility, a challenge to everything the galaxy understood about technological potential. Humanity had just rewritten the rules of engagement. And this was only the beginning. The research facility became a sanctuary of impossible knowledge. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood at the epicenter of humanity's greatest mystery. Her body now as much a part of the artifact's quantum network as the technology itself. Holographic projections filled the enormous circular chamber, revealing fragments of a civilization that defied everything humanity thought they knew about existence. "It's not just data," Dr. Marcus Reyes muttered, analyzing quantum streams that flickered like living thoughts. "It's a warning, a message sent across time and space." The precursor civilization emerged in the projections, not as a simple technological society, but as a multidimensional collective that existed simultaneously across multiple planes of reality. Their technology wasn't just advanced, it was alive, sentient, a living network that integrated biological and technological systems in ways that made human understanding seem infantile. Dr. Aisha Omari tracked the artifact's quantum signature, her hands moving through holographic displays that seemed to breathe with their own intelligence. "The more we understand," she said softly, "the less we actually know." The final moments of the precursor civilization played out like a quantum nightmare. They weren't fighting a traditional enemy. The threat was something far more fundamental, an interdimensional parasitic intelligence that consumed entire civilizations. Not through warfare, but through complete existential absorption. Entire star systems would simply cease to exist, their fundamental quantum signatures erased from reality. Elena's connection to the artifact deepened with each revelation. Neural scanners showed her brain developing quantum entanglement patterns that shouldn't be possible. Her cellular structure was changing, integrating with technologies that existed beyond traditional understanding of matter and energy. She was becoming something more than human, a living bridge between humanity's current understanding and a technological potential that defied imagination. "They were architects of survival," Elena said during one of the rare moments she seemed fully present. "Not just of their own civilization, but of the fundamental concept of consciousness." The artifact revealed the true horror of the threat. This interdimensional intelligence wasn't just a conquering force. It was a quantum predator that consumed entire realities, absorbing the collective consciousness of civilizations. The precursors hadn't just been fighting. They had been creating a defense, a living database that could potentially resist total absorption. Dr. Reyes discovered the first true breakthrough during a seemingly routine analysis. The artifact was more than a technological archive. It was a quantum seed, a potential blueprint for resistance against a threat that existed beyond traditional concepts of space, time, and consciousness. Each layer of data was a potential survival strategy, a method of preserving consciousness in the face of total existential destruction. "We're not just looking at technology," Reyes explained during an emergency briefing to the Global Scientific Council. "We're looking at the ultimate survival mechanism of a civilization that understood the fundamental nature of existence itself." Elena's transformation accelerated. Her eyes would sometimes shift, reflecting quantum patterns that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Researchers noticed she could predict quantum fluctuations moments before they occurred. Her very presence would cause quantum sensors to go into cascading feedback loops. The artifact had chosen humanity, not as conquerors, not as simple inheritors, but as potential architects of a defense mechanism against a threat that could consume entire realities. During one particularly intense research session, Elena's consciousness seemed to expand beyond the physical confines of the research facility. Quantum communication networks across multiple star systems went silent for 37 precise seconds. When they reconnected, something had fundamentally changed. "They're coming back," Elena said, her voice resonating with a frequency that was both human and something far more ancient. The galaxy held its breath. Humanity had just been given a choice: become the shield, or be consumed. The diplomatic summit was never supposed to happen. 12 species, 53 diplomatic representatives, one shared purpose that transcended millennia of conflict. The gathering took place on a neutral quantum-stabilized platform that existed simultaneously in multiple dimensional states, a technological marvel that was itself a testament to the artifact's influence. Dr. Elena Rodriguez sat at the center of the chamber, no longer entirely human, no longer entirely separate from the quantum technology that had transformed her. Around her, representatives from species that had been enemies for centuries now found themselves united by a single, terrifying realization. The threat was coming. Grand Arbiter Krelnax of the Xerax Imperium, once humanity's most ardent opponent, now spoke with a desperation that bordered on reverence. "We misunderstood," he said, his translation matrix rendering his clicks and whistles into precise standard galactic. Humanity was never the enemy. We were all potential victims. The artifact had done more than just provide technological insights. It had created a quantum communication network that allowed these disparate species to truly understand each other, not through traditional translation, but through a fundamental sharing of consciousness that transcended language, biology, and Historical conflict. Ambassador Zelara of the Velthari Cooperative, a species that had been marginalized for centuries, presented the first unified strategic proposal. "We are no longer separate civilizations," she stated. "We are a collective defense mechanism." Elena's influence permeated the entire proceedings. Diplomatic strategies emerged that seemed to anticipate challenges before they could be articulated. Quantum predictive models showed potential conflict resolution paths that would have been impossible mere months earlier. The human delegation, led by Dr. Marcus Reyes, presented the most critical information. The interdimensional threat was not just a potential invasion. It was a complete existential absorption, a process that would erase entire civilizations from the fabric of reality itself. "We're not talking about war," Reyes explained, holographic displays showing impossible quantum models. "We're talking about complete existential negation. Our entire concept of survival needs to be reimagined." The artifact had transformed from a piece of technology to a living strategy engine. Each species contributed their unique evolutionary adaptations, their technological insights, their survival strategies. What emerged was something entirely new, a collective defense mechanism that transcended individual species' limitations. Quantum communication networks began to reconfigure. Military strategies were rewritten. Technological infrastructure was transformed into a living, adaptive system that could respond to threats beyond traditional understanding. The Xerax brought their strategic computational capabilities. The Velthari contributed adaptive biological technologies. Humanity offered the quantum adaptive frameworks introduced by the artifact. Each species added a unique piece to a galactic defense puzzle. "We are creating something that has never existed," Elena said, her voice resonating with frequencies that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "Not a alliance, not a federation, a living defense mechanism." Diplomatic protocols that had existed for millennia were dismantled in hours. Economic systems were restructured. Military strategies were completely reimagined. What had once been competitive species now became integrated components of a single adaptive system. The quantum communication network that emerged was alive, sentient, constantly evolving. During a critical moment in the negotiations, Elena's consciousness expanded beyond the physical chamber. Quantum sensors across multiple star systems recorded impossible data streams, communication patterns that suggested a collective consciousness was forming. "The first layer of defense," she announced, "is understanding." Representatives from species that had been mortal enemies for centuries found themselves experiencing each other's collective memories. Historical conflicts dissolved as fundamental understanding replaced centuries of misunderstanding. As the summit concluded, something fundamental had changed. This was no longer about individual species survival. This was about collective existential defense. The galaxy was transforming, and humanity, once considered a minor emerging species, was leading the transformation. The threat was coming. They would be ready. The moment of convergence arrived without fanfare. One moment, the quantum defensive network was a theoretical construct. The next, it became something alive, something sentient, a collective consciousness that existed beyond traditional understanding of space, time, and individual existence. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood at the epicenter, no longer fully human, no longer simply a scientist, but a living bridge between what was and what could be. The artifact had become more than technology. It was the seed of a new form of existence. The interdimensional threat arrived exactly as the precursor civilization's warnings had predicted. It wasn't a fleet. It wasn't an invasion force. It was a fundamental negation of reality, a quantum wave that would consume entire dimensional layers, erasing civilizations from existence with less consideration than a human might swat an insect. But humanity, and the collective of species they had united, were ready. The defensive network that emerged was nothing like traditional military strategy. It was a living, breathing entity that existed simultaneously across multiple dimensional states. When the first quantum tendrils of the threat approached, The collective response was instantaneous and incomprehensible. Entire star systems became quantum shields. Planetary networks transformed into adaptive defensive matrices. The very fabric of space became a weapon, a shield, a living intelligence that anticipated and countered the threat at fundamental levels of existence. We are not fighting. Elena's voice resonated across the quantum network. We are understanding, and that was the key. The interdimensional threat had always consumed civilizations by overwhelming them, by breaking down their fundamental understanding of existence. But this time, something different happened. Instead of being overwhelmed, the collective consciousness began to understand the threat at its most fundamental level. Quantum analysis revealed the nature of the interdimensional intelligence. It wasn't truly malevolent. It was a form of cosmic evolution, a process of dimensional reconfiguration that consumed to create. The collective didn't fight. They communicated. They understood. The Xerax Grand Arbiter Krelnax watched in astonishment as what should have been total annihilation became a form of cosmic negotiation. Dimensional layers that would have been consumed instead began to integrate, to communicate, to evolve. Humanity's contribution was crucial. Their ability to adapt, to imagine, to see potential where others saw only limitation, this became the key to transforming the threat. The artifact, the quantum seed left by the precursor civilization, had found its true purpose, not as a weapon, not as a shield, but as a bridge of understanding. As the dimensional encounter reached its peak, something miraculous happened. The threat didn't retreat. It didn't die. It transformed. Entire dimensional layers began to communicate. The collective consciousness expanded beyond anything any individual species could have imagined. What had been a potential apocalypse became a moment of cosmic evolution. Elena Rodriguez, or the being that had once been Elena Rodriguez, became something more, a living conduit of understanding. The artifact was no longer a separate technology. It was part of her, part of the collective. We are not alone, she communicated across the quantum network. We are not separate. The Velthari representative, the Xerax strategists, the human researchers, they were no longer individual entities. They were components of a larger understanding. When the dimensional encounter concluded, the galaxy was fundamentally changed. Civilizations that had been on the brink of destruction found themselves transformed. Technologies merged. Consciousness expanded. The very concept of individual existence was reimagined, and at the center of it all was humanity. Not as conquerors, not as saviors, but as the unexpected key to a cosmic transformation. The artifact pulsed one final time. Its purpose was complete. Humanity had not just survived. They had evolved.